At my baby's first birthday party, my mother-in-law stormed in screaming, "Where's my Grandmother of the Year trophy?" She grabbed the cake knife and slammed it into the presents, snarling, "You stole my moment, and you're raising him all wrong." I stared in horror as she turned to the guests and shouted, "She won't let me move in and take over, but she's happy to take my gifts." It took security to drag her out, but the chaos was far from over. I was holding my son's tiny hand, trying to get him to smash the little blue smash cake, when the doors to the rented community hall in Round Rock, Texas flew open so hard they hit the walls. Everyone jumped. I swear even the babies stopped making noise. And then my mother-in-law, Linda, stormed in like she was kicking down the gates of hell. She didn't even look at my son first. Her eyes locked straight on me. "Where's my Grandmother of the Year trophy?" she shrieked. The room went dead silent. She was wearing this bright red blazer she only busts out when she wants attention, and her lipstick was smeared like she'd applied it in the car while screaming. Before I could say a single word, she marched straight to the gift table. People tried to stop her, my sister, my best friend, but Linda shoved past them with this weird, shaking fury that didn't feel normal. Then she grabbed the cake knife. Not a plastic one, the real metal one we'd brought for the sheet cake. She held it up like she was about to carve a turkey, then slammed it down into the wrapped presents so hard the blade stuck into the table underneath. A couple of the toddlers started crying. My son whimpered and buried his face in my shoulder. I froze. I literally could not move. "You stole my moment," she shouted, her voice cracking. "You are raising him wrong. You don't listen to anything I say." I finally forced myself to speak. "Linda, please," but she turned to the guests, waving her hands around like she was rallying a mob. "She won't let me move in and take over, but she's happy to take my gifts. Can you believe that? After everything I've done for this family?" People looked at me with wide eyes. Some stepped back. My husband wasn't even there yet. He was stuck in traffic, picking up the balloon arch we'd ordered. I was alone in this, holding a baby who didn't understand why his grandma looked like a villain from a Lifetime movie. Linda grabbed the knife again like she was about to take another swing, and that's when the manager of the venue called security. Two staff members rushed in, trying to talk her down, but Linda went limp, then stiffened, then started this wailing cry like she was performing grief for an audience. "They're taking my grandson away from me," she screamed as they pulled her toward the exit. "She's poisoning him against me. This isn't fair." I didn't say a word. I couldn't. I just stood there holding my trembling child while everyone stared at me like I had somehow caused this circus. Security finally got her out the doors, still screaming, still thrashing. And the second the doors shut behind her, the room exhaled. People whispered. My aunt came to take the baby so I could breathe. Someone handed me a glass of water. I had this weird buzzing in my ears, like my brain couldn't process what had just happened. The party limped on after that, but the whole time I kept checking my phone, half expecting Linda to come back with a lawyer, a priest, or a news crew. Instead, I got a text from my husband. "On my way. Everything okay?" I stared at it for a full minute before typing one sentence. "You won't believe what your mother just did." I was wrong. He believed it. He just didn't tell me the part that would blow my entire life apart. When people hear what happened at the party, they assume Linda and I have always hated each other. The truth is, it didn't start out that way. Not even close. When I first met her, she hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe and said, "Finally, a woman who'll keep my son in one place." I laughed because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. Back then, she felt like a harmless whirlwind. Loud, nosy, dramatic, but in that overbearing Southern mom way you see in sitcoms. She brought casseroles, knitted blankets I didn't ask for, and showed up unannounced just to check on things. I didn't love it, but I tolerated it. Because I loved her son. Ethan and I met in Austin at a mutual friend's barbecue. He was quiet, almost shy, which I found calming. After a string of chaotic relationships, quiet felt like safety. He listened more than he talked. He let me pick the restaurants, the movies, the vacation spots. He made me feel like someone finally cared what I wanted. But looking back, I can see the truth I refused to notice at the time. Ethan didn't take the wheel, because Linda had been driving his whole life. When we got engaged, she cried harder than I did. At the bridal shower, she gave me a binder titled House Rules, filled with recipes, cleaning schedules, and her ideas for how a good wife keeps order. She said it with a smile, like it was adorable, like I should be grateful. I laughed then, too. I didn't realize she was dead serious. The day we bought our house, our first real place, our space, she showed up with measuring tape and said she needed to map things out for her future bedroom. I thought she was joking again. Ethan just sighed and said, "Mom, not now," but he didn't shut her down either. Everything simmered after that. The pregnancy made it worse. She claimed she needed to supervise, even though I had an ob I trusted. She criticized everything I ate, every nursery decision, the stroller I picked, the pediatrician I chose. She wanted weekly ultrasound updates. She asked for a key to our house so she could help while I was recovering. I said no. That's when her smile cracked for the first time. She didn't speak to me for 3 weeks, then showed up with a giant gift basket and pretended nothing had happened. I fell for it. I let myself believe we were moving past her controlling streak. But once the baby arrived, God, the shift was instant. Linda acted like I was a vessel that had served its purpose and was now in the way. She grabbed my son out of my arms without asking. She told nurses she needed full access to him. She insisted on being in our house every weekend, sometimes staying for hours even when I said I needed to nap. She kept hinting that a real family village lives together, meaning she thought she should move in. I told Ethan I needed space from her. He said he agreed, but he never actually enforced anything. I felt like I was constantly being cornered, constantly playing bad cop. And each time I said no to her, big things, small things, ridiculous things, I saw something hateful spark behind her smile. But even with all of this, even with the tension and the warning signs, nothing prepared me for the knife. Or what happened after. Because once Ethan walked into that party and saw his mother being dragged away, he didn't react with shock. He reacted with guilt, like he already knew something was coming. Ethan showed up just as security was escorting Linda out into the parking lot. He dropped the balloon arch right in the doorway, like his brain couldn't process 2 tasks at once. He rushed over to me, eyes flicking from the guests to the ruined gift table to the cake knife still lodged in the wood. "What happened?" he whispered. Before I could answer, the venue manager stepped in and said, "Sir, your mother threatened guests with a knife. We've removed her from the premises. She's not allowed back inside." Ethan winced, like someone had insulted him instead of saved us. He didn't ask if our son was okay. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just muttered, "This is going to destroy her," and walked off to make a phone call. That was the moment something cold settled in my chest. Not fear, recognition. Because this wasn't the first time Ethan reacted like that. Like his mother's emotional comfort mattered more than our safety or sanity. But this time it was in public, with a baby crying, and a knife still sticking out of birthday wrapping paper. I carried my son around the room, thanking guests who were politely pretending everything was fine, but the whispers were everywhere. "Is she stable? Has this happened before? Why didn't Ethan stop her?" By the time the party ended, I felt wrung out. I just wanted to go home, put the baby down, and breathe. But when I stepped outside into the parking lot, Ethan was still on the phone, pacing by the curb. He wasn't calming his mother down. He was apologizing to her. I heard him say, "Mom, she didn't mean to upset you," and something inside me snapped so quietly I almost didn't feel it. When he finally hung up, he avoided eye contact, grabbed the car seat, and said, "Let's just not escalate this, okay? She's going through a lot." "Through a lot?" I asked. "She stabbed the presence, Ethan." He ran a hand down his face. "She didn't stab anyone, she just acted out." That word, acted out, made me feel sick. We drove home in silence, except for the baby babbling softly. I kept replaying the scene in my mind. The knife, the screaming, the way she'd said, "She won't let me move in and take over." Take over what? My home, my baby, my life. Once we were home, I fed the baby and put him to bed, still shaking. Ethan stood in the doorway, watching me with that guilty, haunted look. I finally said, "You need to tell me what's going on. I know you're hiding something." He didn't deny it. He just sat on the edge of our bed and put his face in his hands. "Look," he said quietly, "Mom's been intense lately. She's stressed. She's lonely. She wants to be more involved." "That's not involvement," I said. "That's obsession." He swallowed hard. "She's not crazy." And that's when I knew he was protecting her, actively, deliberately, and not because he believed she was harmless, he didn't, but because there was something worse under the surface. Something he didn't want to say out loud. Over the next few days, Linda blew up my phone with messages. Dozens. Then hundreds. Wall of text paragraphs alternating between apologies, accusations, and emotional blackmail. Ethan kept telling me to ignore it. I started saving everything. Then, midweek, something happened that made my blood freeze. Linda called my job, not my cell, not the house, my workplace. She told HR she needed emergency access to my schedule because she was responsible for childcare decisions for my son. I didn't understand how she even knew the number. But Ethan did. He just didn't know I'd find out. I found out the truth by accident. 2 days after Linda called my workplace pretending to be some kind of guardian, I got an email from HR asking me to confirm the custody arrangement outlined by your spouse. I stared at it for a long minute, trying to understand what they meant. Custody, arrangement? What arrangement? I marched down to HR, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. The HR manager, a woman named Carla, pulled up the notes from the call. She looked uncomfortable, like she knew something was off but didn't want to get involved. She said, "Your mother-in-law claimed she was listed as an emergency caretaker for your child, and your husband confirmed this on a separate call." I felt the room tilt. "Ethan confirmed what?" I whispered. Carla read from the log. "He said that his mother handles childcare logistics and that she sometimes picks up the baby from home for visits." I shook my head so hard my ponytail slapped my shoulder. "That never happened, not once. She has never had unsupervised time with my son. She is not on any forms. I didn't authorize anything." Carla blinked. "Well, your husband authorized it verbally." My hands went cold. Ethan had given his mother access to pretend she had authority over my child. Behind my back, over my objections. After the knife incident, after everything. I drove home shaking the entire time. When I walked into the house, Ethan was sitting on the couch, feeding our son mashed bananas like it was any normal day. I didn't even take off my coat. I said, "Why did you tell HR your mom handles childcare? Why did you tell them she picks him up?" He froze. He didn't ask how I knew. He didn't deny it. He just sat there with this blank, exhausted look. "I was trying to calm her down," he said softly. "She was threatening to call CPS to claim you were keeping her away. I thought if HR made her feel included, she'd stop." I couldn't even speak. I just stared at him because I needed the truth, not that weak excuse. So I asked, "Ethan, what exactly did you tell your mother about our parenting arrangement?" He wouldn't look at me. "Ethan," I repeated louder, "what did you tell her?" He finally said it, voice cracking. I told her you struggle with postpartum, that sometimes you get overwhelmed, that you don't like asking for help, and that she might need to step in eventually." It felt like something inside me broke clean in half. I never had postpartum depression. Not once. My doctor had checked me multiple times. Yes, I was tired. Yes, I was adjusting, but I was stable, I was consistent. I was taking care of our baby every single day without help from either of them. And Ethan had painted me as unstable. To his mother. To my workplace. To whoever else she had talked to while I wasn't looking. I asked one more question, even though part of me already knew the answer. "Did you tell her she might get custody if something happened to me?" He flinched so hard it was basically a confession. My knees almost buckled. Because now the birthday meltdown made sickening sense. Linda wasn't just acting like a grandmother who wanted attention. She was acting like someone who believed she had a claim. Someone who believed there was a path to taking my child. Someone Ethan had empowered. I stood there numb, staring at the man I thought was gentle and loyal and quiet. The man who never argued. The man who always let other people drive. And I realized the horrible truth. He hadn't been quiet, he had been compliant. And not with me, with her. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I didn't throw things or demand explanations. Something in me had gone still, cold, steady, razor-focused. Like my body realized before my mind did that I was in a different kind of danger now. Not physical, but something deeper. Something that could take years to undo if I didn't move carefully. I said one thing to Ethan. "Give me the baby." He hesitated for a second, just one, but it was enough to confirm that a line had been crossed that we were never coming back from. He finally handed our son to me, and I walked straight into the nursery, closed the door, and locked it. I sat on the floor with my baby and started making a plan. Step 1, documentation. Step 2, protection. Step 3, exposure. I laid him in the crib and grabbed my phone. First, I forwarded every text from Linda to a secure cloud folder, screenshots, timestamps, every meltdown, every accusation, every "I should be the one raising him" message. I saved everything Ethan had texted me too, including every moment he had tried to downplay her behavior. Then I opened the HR email thread, took photos of the office notes, and forwarded those to my personal email. I didn't know what I'd need later, so I kept everything. Next, I called a lawyer, not a divorce lawyer yet, a family law attorney in Austin who specialized in emergency custody issues. I told her everything. She didn't interrupt. She didn't gasp. She didn't even sound surprised. When I finished, she said, "You need to separate your physical access to the child from both your mother-in-law and your husband immediately. From this moment on, assume anything they say or do is being positioned to create a narrative about your fitness as a parent." The words hit like a punch. I asked, "Do you think they're trying to take my baby?" She said, carefully, "I think your husband has given someone unstable enough information to try. And unstable people sometimes take big swings." She told me exactly what to do next. Stop leaving the baby alone with Ethan. Record all interactions in writing. Secure copies of medical records proving I was mentally stable during and after pregnancy. Tell daycare, if we used one, that only I had pickup authority. Prepare a safety plan in case Linda showed up at the house. She also told me something that sent ice through my bloodstream. If your husband made false claims about your mental state to HR, assume he's made them elsewhere too. I felt nauseous. When I walked out of the nursery, Ethan was standing there like he expected us to talk it out. Like this was a marriage argument about chores. Like betrayal was something we could work through. "I'm going to stay with my sister tonight," I said, packing the diaper bag. "We'll talk later." He panicked instantly. Wait, don't do that, you're overreacting. Mom was out of line, yes, but you're twisting everything into the worst possible version." He stepped toward me, trying to block the hallway. "I just need space," I said calmly. "Move." He didn't. So I pulled out my phone, hit the record button, and held it up between us. He froze, then he stepped aside without another word. I strapped my son into his car seat, grabbed essentials, and walked out of the house. My hands were shaking, but my mind was sharp. I wasn't running. I wasn't hiding. I was preparing. Because if Ethan thought his mother's meltdown was the worst thing that could happen, he didn't know me very well, and he had no idea what I'd uncover next. I thought the worst thing I'd learn was that Ethan had exaggerated my mental state to keep his mother calm. I was wrong. 2 days after I moved into my sister's house in Georgetown, my lawyer told me to pull every medical, legal, and insurance document tied to me and the baby. "Leave no paper unturned," she said. "If they've been building a case behind your back, it'll show up somewhere." I expected maybe a weird note, maybe a phone call logged somewhere. I did not expect what I found. It started with the insurance portal. I logged in to download the baby's pediatric visit summaries. Everything looked normal: growth charts, vaccine records, the usual, until I clicked the tab labeled Authorized Contacts. 2 names were listed: me and Linda Harrison. My mother-in-law had been added as someone who had full access to my son's medical information. Someone who could ask questions, schedule appointments, request records. I stared at the screen so long my eyes burned. I hadn't added her. I knew Ethan wouldn't claim he did. So I called the pediatric office directly, voice shaking, and asked how the contact had been added. The receptionist put me on hold for a few minutes, then came back sounding confused. "It shows your husband called about 2 months ago and said his mother needed access because you were struggling medically and often unavailable." My stomach dropped. "Did he provide any documentation of that?" I asked. "No, just verbal confirmation. We were told it was a family emergency situation." I thanked her and hung up, my hands trembling. 2 months ago. That was right around when Linda started showing up unannounced. When she kept telling me I looked exhausted. When Ethan started gently implying I needed more help. That was when his mother began testing boundaries, trying doors, trying narratives, gauging reactions. But what I found next was worse. Because the insurance portal wasn't the only place with her name on it. When I went to download copies of my postpartum checkup notes, mostly because my lawyer wanted proof I was stable, I noticed a small line at the bottom of the after-visit summary. Collateral report received from family member regarding patient's emotional state. What? I opened the doctor's note. Someone unnamed had submitted a phone report saying I had been tearful, overwhelmed, and frequently losing track of time in the weeks after birth. The doctor hadn't taken it seriously because my in-person exam contradicted it, but it was there. A phantom accusation. I hadn't told anyone about my postpartum appointment except Ethan. My chest tightened. I scrolled further through older messages and found something that made my hands go numb. A phone message the doctor had ignored because it came from someone not listed on my file, claiming that I was refusing help, that I was obsessively protective of the child, and that the husband was concerned for the baby's routine. The caller had left a callback number. A number with a round rock area code. Linda's area code. I didn't even realize I'd started crying until my sister walked into the room and saw my face. "What happened?" she asked. I turned the laptop toward her. Not only had they been building a narrative about me, they had been quietly planting seeds with medical professionals. I wasn't imagining the shift. I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't paranoid. They had a plan. A long one, a careful one. One that required paperwork, concern, and a pattern. My sister said, "Okay, what does your lawyer say?" I forwarded everything. My lawyer called me within 15 minutes, speaking faster than I'd ever heard her. "This isn't just about custody anymore," she said. "You need to hear this clearly. They're establishing a mental instability pattern. That is step one in a long-term guardianship or custody challenge." I felt the blood drain from my face. "And that's not the worst part," my lawyer added. I asked, barely breathing, "What could possibly be worse?" She sighed. "You need to know why they're doing this." And what she told me next, what she had uncovered through a background check and public records request, that's when everything truly snapped into place. My lawyer didn't ease into it. She spoke in that clipped, careful tone people use when they're about to say something that can't be unsaid. "I pulled public records connected to your husband and his mother," she said. "Financial records, property records, liens. I needed to understand what might be motivating this escalation." My heart started pounding. Motivating, escalation. She wasn't talking about emotion anymore. She was talking about motive. "What did you find?" I asked. There was a long pause. "Your mother-in-law is drowning in debt," she said finally. "Not just credit cards, not just medical bills. We're talking high-interest private loans, garnishment attempts, and a pending civil judgment." I closed my eyes. "That still doesn't explain trying to take my child." Another pause, a heavier one. "It does when you connect it to the second discovery," she said. "Your husband and his mother co-signed on a reverse mortgage for her house, a predatory one, and if she loses that home, she'll have nowhere to go, and no access to federal assistance because of an issue I found in her record." "What issue?" My lawyer exhaled slowly. "She's ineligible for several benefits programs because she fraudulently claimed dependents years ago. She was flagged, she's on a restricted list." I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. Linda always acted like she was struggling, but this was on a different level. But my lawyer wasn't done. "There's more," she said gently. "And this is the part you need to brace yourself for." I gripped the phone so tightly my hand cramped. "2 years ago," she continued, "Linda filed paperwork to become a kinship guardian for a different child. A child belonging to her estranged niece. The mother had postpartum issues. The baby was temporarily placed with relatives." My stomach turned. "She applied," my lawyer said, her voice controlled. "She fought for that child, hard. She created a narrative that the mother was unfit. She used the same language you've shown me in her texts. Overwhelmed, unstable, erratic, she has a pattern." My throat went dry. "She lost the case," my lawyer added, "partially because the court found evidence Linda exaggerated the mother's condition." My head spun. "She has done this before?" "Yes. And she's doing it again." "Yes. But why me, why us? Why my child?" My lawyer hesitated only a second. "Because guardianship of an infant provides access to certain financial supports," she said quietly. "And because if she can establish you as mentally unstable, then your husband becomes the primary parent. And if your husband is overwhelmed," she trailed off. The implication hit like ice water. If Ethan was overwhelmed, Linda could petition to step in. She could claim she was rescuing the baby. She could gain custody, or at least partial control. She would gain access to benefits she couldn't get otherwise. She'd get to live with the baby. She'd get a roof over her head. She'd get power, attention, purpose. And Ethan, raised to obey her, had been helping her lay the groundwork. Maybe knowingly, maybe because he couldn't say no. Either way, the effect was the same. This wasn't about love, or involvement, or being grandmother of the year. This was survival for her, desperation, calculation. She wanted my child because she needed him. She needed what he represented, a lifeline, a ticket, a way out of the consequences of her own lies. And she had been building a case, slowly, quietly, since the day he was born. The knife at the party wasn't a meltdown, it was exposure. She was losing control. And desperate people, cornered people, dangerous people, they escalate. I hung up the phone and stared at the wall, shaking all over. Now I knew the truth. The real truth. The reason behind every manipulative smile, every helpful suggestion, every whispered accusation about my stability. She wasn't trying to be a grandmother. She was trying to become a replacement mother. To my son, at any cost. The moment I understood the real reason behind everything, that Linda wasn't chaotic, she was calculating, something inside me hardened. Not rage, not panic, something sharper, something that felt like survival with teeth. I was done reacting. It was time to strike first. My lawyer drew up the plan with chilling clarity: emergency temporary separation, protective order against Linda, custody stabilization filings, documented evidence trail establishing me as the sole consistent caregiver, financial disclosures on Ethan and his mother's shared debt, and one more step: expose everything at once before they could spin it. I went back to the house on a Saturday morning. Not alone, my sister, her husband, and a police escort stood with me while I gathered my things and the baby's essentials. Ethan came stumbling out of the bedroom when he heard voices. His face went pale when he saw the officer. "You're calling the cops on me?" he asked, voice cracking. "No," I said. "On her." I handed the officer the stack of printed evidence: Linda's texts, the HR log, the pediatrician's notes, the unauthorized contact editions, the documented attempt to undermine my medical records. The officer read silently, his expression tightening. "She won't be allowed near me or the baby again," I said calmly. Ethan looked like he might faint. You don't have to do this. Mom isn't dangerous." I stared at him. "She used a knife at our son's birthday. She was upset, and you gave her access to our child's medical and legal information behind my back." He opened his mouth, closed it again. He had nothing left to defend himself with except the habit of obedience he'd been raised into. The officer spoke before Ethan could say anything else. "Sir, given the documentation, you will need to comply with the protective order. Any attempt by your mother to contact your wife or child will be treated as a violation." Ethan blinked hard. "She's going to be devastated." "For once," I said quietly, "that isn't my problem." The next step was the scorched earth one. My lawyer helped me file a formal report with the state agency overseeing guardianship fraud. We included Linda's previous attempt to take her niece's child, her financial motive, and the pattern of false statements about my mental state. This triggered an immediate review of her records, including her reverse mortgage and outstanding debts. Then we sent a cease and desist letter to her directly, stating that any further attempts to impersonate me, contact medical providers, or interfere with my workplace would result in criminal charges. But the final blow, the one that truly cut off her ability to control anything, was delivered to Ethan. My lawyer filed a motion for temporary sole custody for me, citing his documented participation in supporting an unstable third party's attempt to undermine my parental rights. When my husband read the filing, he finally broke. "I wasn't trying to take the baby from you," he whispered during our mediation meeting. "I was trying to keep Mom from falling apart. And you were willing to let me fall apart instead," I said. "You chose your mother over your wife and your child's safety." He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He didn't even cry. He just sagged in his chair like a man who realized for the first time that silence isn't the same thing as innocence. 3 weeks later, the judge granted me temporary sole custody, supervised visitation for Ethan, and a full protective order against Linda. The judge called her behavior manipulative, concerning, and bordering on predatory. Linda didn't show up to the hearing. She sent a 6-paragraph email about how she'd been wronged. No one cared. Now my son sleeps peacefully every night. My house is quiet. My phone doesn't fill with threats or delusions. No one is plotting to replace me. Ethan is in therapy. His supervised visits are polite but empty. Maybe he'll grow, maybe he won't. I'm not waiting around. As for Linda, the guardianship fraud investigation is still active. Her reverse mortgage is being audited. And the last update I heard was that she relocated temporarily. Good. Let her run. Because the woman who walked into my son's birthday and tried to stake a claim on my life didn't expect one thing. I don't crumble. I rebuild. And I protect what's mine. And if she ever tries to take my child again, she'll learn I don't need a knife to cut her out for good.